Just wanted to stare at you. I did call to say hi. I
Good?
didn't tell her I knew.
Good, yeah.
She told me.
Good morning, everyone. I call to order the committee meetings of the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority. First committee up, Finance Committee. Chair Hayes, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Select, you call the roll, please. So that's not here. Okay, I'm here, Paul's here, Ann is not here unless she's online.
No.
Okay, Bobby, are you online?
No.
Ricky, are you online? Kevin's here, Mike is here, so that's 1, 2,
We have a quorum.
You have a quorum. Okay,
We have a quorum.
do we have any public comment, Tom? Okay, sounds good. Next are the action items, approval of the meeting minutes of October 23rd, 2025. They were posted online and entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Paul, second by Mike. Any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, financial statements, Todd.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to jump in. I thought this meeting was changed to virtual for everyone, so I apologize that I'm not there. Is anyone taking the minutes?
Sure, yeah, so that is.
Okay, someone just said so that wasn't there, so.
Not right now. Who is that?
She was here.
Is that Elizabeth?
Yeah, she'll be back in a second. She was
Yes,
here
it's
earlier.
Elizabeth.
Okay. All right, I was gonna say, like,
Unknown participant is now joining.
Got it at the bottom, okay.
Unknown.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Like these here, Todd?
Who's the unknown participant? All right.
that was probably her.
Good morning, all.
Joining.
Right.
I'll let Savette get back to her normal chair, normal spot. So we're good to go. All righty. Little solemn faces there after that pathetic Eagles performance today.
Why are you
We're
wearing your
disappointing.
green coat?
Huh?
Why are you wearing green?
Because it's money.
That's not Kelly Green.
All right, I always start off with the traffic. We had a really good month of October, 13% higher than last year. If you remember last year, it was Hurricane Milton. So 22 flights were canceled in October of last year. So that's a big part of the reason that the traffic is up. Obviously around here, the traffic does impact our business. So last year was a prime example. You can see where we are year to date. We're on course we're still on course at this point. Best 10 months all time, slightly ahead of 04, which was our best year on record ever. 950K is our latest estimate of commercial traffic. Obviously, a big part of our traffic now is bus traffic. This is through November. If you remember, we weren't able to do it last month because of the shutdown, government shutdown. And I think the last time, you can see down there, the last time we did it was about 2 months ago. September 20th was the last time we had data. So this is through the 15th. And we've improved a lot over those 2 months. So if you go back to through September 20th, our throughput was 8.1 through September 20th. Now it's 10.4 through November 15th. And our seats are up a little bit more, but still that. And a lot of that I think is attributable to, like I said, the Hurricane Milton from last time, year-over-year increase. Moved us up a little bit ahead of Charleston. Still doing much better than the peer average. And we are 4th out of our 10 groups that we use here for our peer groups.
Is there anything, Tom, in particular, Darren, going on in terms of our competitor airports that might change these numbers in the next year?
Nothing that we know of.
New carriers coming into any of them that we're aware of?
No one that we know of right now.
Okay.
So month of October, a little bit better than last year at this time. We had a budgeted loss anticipated, but considering last year we had the hurricane, this year, you can see our numbers are trending down. all things considered. And a lot of our budgeted increases, some of our timing of some of our expenses and our revenue, which is a big piece of it, is up, which is really driving a lot of our increase versus budget is our revenue, which is always a good thing. See here, that -6 is what we talked about before. We wanted to be in that -6 range, assuming that revenues came in at budget, but you can see that revenues are coming in ahead of budget, which is again helping our overall favorability to budget. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that revenue's up. We can only do so much as far as managing expenses. So revenue is what really drives things. So we can control expenses, manage them, but revenue is always necessary. So as revenue's up, it always makes life a little easier for us. See what's driving our profit center is really what makes up, and you can this kind of rolls into our budget discussion, which is coming up next. Top numbers there, the top two, parking and CARES. Obviously, one of them won't be there in 2026, but you can see a lot of the subsidies and stuff that we have, particularly in airfield and terminal at the bottom. That's why those numbers are in the negatives. Big piece of our big variances, these are the larger variances, over 100,000. Employee benefits, and a lot of that is based on the number of full-time employees that we have versus budget. We have more hours because folks are working a little bit more overtime to make up for it, but you're saving on the employee benefits twofold. Number one, you're saving because you have less people, so you're not paying the benefits on them. The second part of that is the selections that people are taking. They're not as much families as we had in our budget, because we're assuming a certain percentage. So if we get all singles, obviously that's less expensive than for all families. And then we also had our rebate from last year that we didn't have in our budget that kind of helps us out as well. So that came in better than when we did at the end of the year. That helped us out this year. Kind of breaking down the other ones, aviation services, de-icing. Remember Connie's dream team from the bad weather earlier in the year. Net interest is something that we take a conservative number in. As our cash comes down, that number, and interest rates comes down, that number will come down too. But you kind of see what's going on in the numbers there. And again, this kind of makes up a lot of our, this is all of our fluctuations. And one of the ones that we always talk about, Tom and I always talk about, is number 10 there. That is one that we really don't want to cut because we think there's a long-term benefit to that. Travel and more to training, and then sometimes there's travel associated with it. So that number is there. We want people to take advantage of that. That's an investment in our folks, and long-term, that will pay off, but so far we have a surplus there that's not being used as much as we would like it to be.
Sylvia, can you?
I got it. I know I had to, but so here's just breaking down kind of the two pieces of our really to make up our expense budget. Personnel costs, which is the biggest piece of our overall budget, -6 versus budget, up 4% versus last year. The big piece is the non-personnel, and a lot of that is those one-time expenses that we talked about in our budget. Biggest one is the demolition. I know Tom's really excited that we're going to use that CARES funding. I know Steve as well. They get excited because we needed to get that demolition done for a long time, didn't have the resources, so we strategically used the CARES to do that, and then we're not carrying it into next year. So it makes it easier for us and to do certain things that are one time, but we don't have the leverage of adding a lot more people, and then we don't have the money to pay for it. So that was the strategic move. You can kind of see that there. And this is kind of what I was talking about earlier on the benefits piece. You can see it there. You know, full-time, we had 168. We're at 155. That's a big part of that employee benefits kind of budgetary variance there. It makes it up. Part-time doesn't really tell you that much because it really doesn't tell you the hours. When you get down there, you can kind of see we're down 13 on full-time, but if you look at full FTEs, not down that much. So the hours are being made up with overtime and some of the other things, but we're just not paying the benefits on those extra people. Or should I say not paying the extra medical and dental. Those are the extra costs. Still pay the extra stuff on the overtime. This is just breaking down the costs, breaking down the employees by department, where we are currently versus budget. And it doesn't tell you the whole story because it's total employees and part-time employees vary significantly. This is kind of going into our cash flow. The only items that are changed versus last month are the ones for November, December. All the numbers for January to April are reflective of the new budgetary numbers, so I didn't make them all yellow, but they're all reflective of the latest numbers that we have in there. Really want to point your attention to item number 10, and that really goes into some of the things we talk about in our budgets, our cash. I know we have a lot of discussions about cash. Number 10 there, we're anticipating doing some debt service on the garage. When we did the refinancing of the 2015, which was the queen of the ball, that's the one everybody wanted, we threw in this one. You got to take her ugly sister if you want to go on the prom. You got to take her ugly sister, and that was the garage. So the garage is basically amortized interest, so there'll be no payments on that during construction, which is something we were concerned about because that's going to obviously impact operations. So while we're doing that, that line is amortized, so whatever interest is going to be capitalized, that's going to roll into the debt at the very end. But that gives us, frees up some of the cash that we would have been worried about because obviously we're going out of CARES, and who knows how construction is going to impact our number one revenue source, which is parking. So this gives us a little bit of cushion as we go into that. Once it's up and running, I think we'll be okay. But during that time period, there'll be some challenges. So that was all strategically done to make sure that we are have a little cushion here. You see the other number there, which is 5, I think that's 12, which really is the leases. That's just kind of a placeholder we put in there. Not necessarily sure if we're going to use it, but we put it in there in case we need it for some equipment or something at that point. These are just, in these, you'll see it almost every month. I know you're probably tired of it, but the capital is the biggest impact on our cash, and receipts and contributions. They are the biggest impact on our cash, and they change month to month. Sometimes it's just a week, but it can go into another month. Timing, shutdowns, everything. So that's all built in there based on our latest estimates on cash. Doesn't change long term, but in the short term, it does change based on when we're going to get things. Kind of see there what's going on with our overall 180 reserve is kind of made up of a lot of different pieces there. And you can see that the 2026 number is line 33 there, which is about 1.8% higher than this year's, which really shows you that we're really tight as far as 1.8 up versus last year's budget. This is our normal.
Tom, if you could go back
Sure.
For 1 second. Just wanted to point out lines 32 and 33. The days cash need, we're budgeting 78,000 and change, 78,535 for 2026, which we'll talk about. But that number was in the 50s.
It was actually in the 40s.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
We're not that long ago. Was
yeah,
it?
since COVID days,
Yeah.
it's gone from the 50s to the high 70s. That's a result of everything costing more. That's a result of having more staff on hand, all of those costs, and debt service associated with all the projects that we've accomplished. But that number has grown dramatically.
Mm-hmm. And it is something that we worry about maintaining, because as we talk about our cash reserve,
Yep.
the more and more leverage that we have to maintain means the more and more cash we have to have. This is our usual cash flow assumptions, just kind of a reminder what they are. And then that's kind of pushing it out over 12 months, again, incorporating the proposed budgetary cash on hand of 78, which is 1.8 through September. That's 12 months there. And this is just our latest projection. Again, for the last 2 months, what we're assuming is budget. Obviously, if we come in at 96, which we've been coming at, these numbers will be better. But you can see worst case scenario from our perspective, we're doing pretty good as far as net income without CARES. And this is just kind of, again, will lead into our budget discussions, really kind of reminding us of where we came from, where we've been. So you can see for the first 10 months of 2019, year to date, our net income was about $3 million in 2019. You can see in 2023, it was almost 3.9. Last year, about 2.8, and this year, roughly around the same. You can kind of see what happened over the last couple of months to take us to year end. That number in 2023 and 2024, which nobody really thinks about, you talk about net income, is the impact of the pension. So if you have a bad year, that shows up on the below the line on the miscellaneous. So if we have to take a hit on that pension, which we did in 2023, you see how much that can impact the net income for the year. And this kind of shows you what's in the budget here, and then our numbers over here, what we have positive. So in 2019, we had 11 months that were actually positive. 2023, 11. Last year, all the months were positive. This year, all the months were positive. We only had 2 in our budget, so we're doing much better than we anticipated. Some of that's due to timing and our increased revenue. And then next year, we have 8 that are in there at this point. And some of that is early on what happens with the snow. You don't know how that's going to play out. So you have to kind of factor that in there. Again, this leads into our discussion of the budget, but it's just good information to know. And again, when somebody says, hey, are you worried? And this is all without CARES. So are you worried about where we are without CARES now? You can see we're pretty much where we were in 2019 when there was no CARES. So we're back to where we were. Any questions? Again, this will lead right into the budget discussions, but any questions?
Entertain a motion to accept the October financial statements. Motion by Mike, second by Kevin. Any discussion? Any additional questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Sounds good. Let's move right into the budget.
All right, before I start, I always want to acknowledge the people behind the scenes that don't get all the credit. Shane over there, who's kind of the silent assassin in the back. Scott, who's never here, and the rest of the accounting team do a great job. Really want to acknowledge the hard work that goes behind the scenes. They do a great job. And this is my public thank you. And everyone on the board should really acknowledge his hard work and the rest of the team. So thank you. All right. Oh, wow. Must be a fire. No, I'm just kidding. All righty. We'll talk about the budget here. And I'm going to blow through some of the stuff we talked about last month. Certainly you'll have questions, but a lot of the stuff is kind of old hat for the stuff we talked about last month. A couple of changes, but just kind of reminders of some of the stuff we talked about last year. I don't want it to be death by PowerPoint. But this is just kind of our overall budgeted kind of things we talk about here. You know, fiscally responsible. These things aren't like an exaggeration. They all kind of make sense when you think about it. The way we all should be running our budgets when we think about these things. For us, our budgetary goals, obviously, we want to manage the resources, meet that debt service requirement, which is a 1.25. We want to make sure we have enough cash to pay our debt, and then there's an extra 25% cushion. Otherwise, it gets a little antsy, and the banks don't like it. One thing we always talk about is number 3, which was a new one we added with the insight from Frank and John. This, because we talk about a lot and it's incorporated into our budget, but just maintain an acceptable level of cash on hand to guard against downside risk. You know, whenever income is impaired, you have to rely on your balance sheet. And for us, the only thing on our balance sheet that we can really rely on, other than some property that we haven't sold, is our cash. Because we can't sell the terminal building, we can't sell some of those other things. So the one thing we have to keep us going, and we learned that during COVID, is to have some cash on hand that keeps things going when income is impaired for whatever reason that we haven't thought about.
I'd add to that, and Todd mentioned capital expenditures in the October 25 statements. We are a capital intense business, in a capital intense business. Everything costs money. Everything costs more than you think it's going to cost, and every cost goes up. Add to that several projects coming down the pike that are material. So maintaining that level of cash to guard against the unfortunate reality that stuff will happen, and we need to be prepared for that.
And I told the story to Frank and John. They don't remember the story. Even John didn't remember. You know, at one point, this was when the airport was in distress, bless you. We didn't have enough cash to make payroll. That was
2013?
it might have been 14.
Okay, not that long ago.
Right. It wasn't that, and we actually ended up using some of the float on the grants to pay payroll. And the FAA didn't like that too much. So we were on a bad boy list for a little bit.
The board should have liked it even less. The board was
Well,
here.
at that point, you know, our options were, you know, that's how bad things were. So we never want to get back to that point. Certainly, you can't control everything, but we're certainly trying to plan to have some, as we call it up here, number 3, protection against downside risk or unforeseen challenges. And then continue to invest in our future. This is one that I added in that we didn't have last month, but it's really critical when we deal with the airline rates and charges. I remember when we talked about the meeting that we had with them and we talked about our rate. I think Mike said, we could charge them more. Remember you said that? And there is unfortunately a balance that we can't charge them too much because they have other options. And we can't charge too low because then we're in trouble. So it is a dance. I'll definitely give Houdini over there, who was working behind the scenes, working up a bunch of different scenarios as we went through it. We were calling him Houdini because we had like a zillion different scenarios to come up with something that we could live with that will hopefully, again, attract and maintain as much air service as possible. Because at the end of the day, if there's no air service, nothing else matters. Because we won't have an airport. Because then, you know, nothing else matters. There'll be no cash, no need to discuss anything else. We have to have flights here. We have to have an airport. We have to run an airport. And in order for us to do that, we need air service. And that's what we're trying to attract and maintain as much of that as possible. And it's not as easy as you think because of our proximity. It works for us on the cargo side because of our proximity to Philly and Newark, but it works against us on the commercial side because of our proximity to Philly and Newark. So there's challenges there. So, and you can see down there, it ended up being $3.1 million of what we call revenue share. So that's money over and above that we had to get back into the rate base to keep them low enough to keep them semi-attractive. Again, in the perfect world, you always hear me say, hey, it's supposed to be break even. That would mean we can have another 3.1 million. We can have another 3.1 million, unfortunately. That would mean probably less air service, and you only get what people pay. So I can charge them all that, but if they're not here, I ain't getting none of it. So you can kind of see that is, last year, we had 2 million in revenue share. That was, I think, our highest that we've ever done. And we also included 2.4, all of our CARES money in their rate base on the front end. Again, there's a method to the madness, a lot of this stuff. Again, what we try to do, even when we talk about how our budgets come in, we on the front end, we say, here's the maximum subsidy we're going to give you. And then we're going to do our best to maintain our expenses on the back end. And then if we don't need to give you all that, we're not going to give it to you. It just kind of helps us out. But again, because, you know, originally, before I got here, nobody wanted to deliver news on the front end and say, hey, you need to pay this much money. So they hit them twice. They hit them on the front end, and then on the back end, they say, oh, by the way, you owe us money. Now, and you've noticed it, even when we go to cash flow, we've managed to give them money back pretty much every year. So it's a different kind of relationship. You get on the front end, you're not worried about me hitting you on the back end. So it's strengthened our relationship, but again, it's a little bit of a dance to do that. And again, there is challenges. So we do our best to manage it, but you know, if one airline leaves, then the rest of them would have to subsidize. So it becomes almost a downward spiral. That's why you got to be careful. You look like you're about to ask a question.
No.
Okay.
Just enthralled.
Then breaking down over here, our balanced budget, 178K. Whew. We were knocking it out of the park. But again, we are, in essence, a not-for-profit. We're not here trying to make as much money as possible, but we have to be self-sustaining. We have to be self-sustaining. If we were a for-profit, that number would be laughable. But because we are self-sustaining, That's all we're trying to do, is cover our expenses, take care of what we need to do, and move forward. Now, again, last year's number, we did a lot better. I'm hoping that it'll be a lot better, because what happens is, I'll give you a perfect, a lot of these assumptions are what I've given you maybe 2 months ago, Shane, a month and a half. What we have, and they're conservative assumptions from 2 months ago. Things could improve, even now they've changed. But we don't have that information at the time. We talk about surplus, a lot of those things. We have to make our most conservative guess at the time we do our assumptions, and then work behind the scenes to kind of manage our expenses as best as possible. That's why we give you updates on where we are month to month. But again, you see there last year without CARES, again, apples to apples without CARES, last year we were at a negative 1.5. So obviously we weren't so self-sustaining without CARES last year. See, last year, you can see down there, our debt service coverage is 1.25. Last year, without CARES, it would have been 1.2. Again, not a good number. But with CARES, we were fine. Without CARES, not so much.
We also had expenses in there, Todd, that would not have been were it not for the CARES money.
Correct.
So,
But again, it's kind of a balancing act. We had some of those one-time expenses. And you see it with some of the municipalities where they've used CARES money to increase staff. But then once that's gone, now you got to try to make up that money somewhere else. And some of that we upped it, but we want to make sure we can sustain whatever we put out there when there wasn't CARES. So that's part of the reason we were strategic and using it for kind of some of these one-time expenses, and the big one being the demolition. These are the same assumptions we talked about last month, but just kind of a reminder what they were. And I'll point out there one thing that we love Allegiant, we do, but we don't want to get to the point where Allegiant's the only show in town. It's not good for anybody. So that's part of the reason we're trying to make all of our stuff as competitive and try to get out and get as much service as possible. We certainly don't want one airline in here controlling everything, because then they would tell us this is what we're going to pay. This is kind of breaking down, same as last month what we had. Again, total employees doesn't tell the full story. It's really the full time down there. So I think year to date we had 168, but there's some ebbs and flows there. We're at 156, so there's still room there for some additional full time from where we were at this point. This is just breaking out same as it was last month. Kind of see the numbers are very similar. It really shows us kind of leveling off when in 2021, when the board said, hey, we're back, you need to hire all these folks. We've done that, but it takes a while. You don't get there overnight. And when you're growing, it gives you some fluctuation because you haven't caught up yet. But once you catch up, then you got to make sure you can maintain that. Just breaking down, this is all the stuff per CBAs, non-union, all that other good stuff there.
Stay on that for 1 second, Todd.
Go back.
What are we, never mind.
Oh, what are you going to say?
Keep going.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Breaking it down, the 16 is overall, but most of that is on the claim fund, Paul, as we talked about last month, but the overall percentage is 16. Again, all things considered, I think that's pretty good down there. Maybe 4% increase on the contributions, pretty consistent with everybody's number. Not huge in the great scheme of things, considering how much costs are going up. See some of the blends there. That's what I said. You see there, all full-time employees are using a blend. So if they come in more single, obviously that works to our advantage. 7, we did get push for a 2-year rate guarantee on the dental, so we'll have no increase next year on the dental. That's always good. Workman's comp, some of the things there you kind of see there. Even the perfect example is number 7. That's a good example right there. Number 7, we put in 2. It's 2% for unemployment is relatively low industry-wise, but our numbers are not 2. Our numbers are lower than 2. But it would be irresponsible to put a number less than 2 in there. So I put 2 in there as a number, but historically, our numbers have been like 1. It's just not that high. But again, conservatively, it's hard to go with something that's so much lower than everything else. Again, we talked about some of the things on the pension and everything else. And at 9.5, all things considered, everything kind of comes out pretty close between the folks that are in the defined contribution and the folks that are in the defined benefit pension. When you talk about the overall cost, it's pretty similar. The only difference is who's managing the investments. That's pretty much what it is. This is one of the big ones we talked about here, that number there. So that is through July. And you can see in 2024, so that 332,000 was a negative expense in 2025 for us. Because that's when we get it. We get it next year, we don't know until the end of the year. So, and through July, we only had an 18K surplus. That's all we had. But we put in 25, so that's where it is now. Who knows what's going to happen between July and the end of the year? My assumption is it's because of the leveraging of the specific level that number will go up, but you don't know. So that's one of the things that helped us out last year that happened after we kind of went through the budget. And this is kind of breaking down. This is a summary in the same form we use on our financials, but just kind of breaking down net revenue, including care. So you can kind of see there it's up 1% versus last year. That's a pretty good number, considering there's no cares, right? That's a pretty good number, but that 2.4 million ain't in there. So that's pretty good. Expenses, 1%. Again, because of a lot of things that are one time, we were able to pull those back. So year over year is not as much. You can kind of see our continued investment in infrastructure and seeing where this is the projection, this is where we are down here. And this is just a detail. You can kind of see all the details all in your packets, but you know, I don't know how much excitement you get. The biggest one down here you can see is obviously cares, no cares. And then at the top there, airfield and terminal, were the increases that we proposed to the airlines, which is still pretty good numbers, 14, 15%. Just breaking down the expenses, kind of breaking them all down here. And income. Talked about the net interest there a little bit, still at the $600,000 number. This year we're running over $1 million on the net interest. That's not operating, but obviously with the ebbs and flow of cash, that number we expect it to at least be 600, but if it's more than that, that just helps us out. So, and again, that's not operating. And this is just kind of breaking down where do we use our revenue? Top two, 51% of all revenue is used for employees. That's pretty common, but you can kind of see there. So half of every dollar that we spend on salaries, we spend on employee benefits. And you can kind of break down all the others. I'll talk about that a little bit more. Debt service, lease payments, and then residual for infrastructure, which is always a challenge because we have, as John said earlier, we are infrastructure heavy, and that number could always be more. It's just a challenge to take care of everything all at once. And this is kind of what we show on a regular basis, but this kind of what happens, what we're projecting for next year on that profit letter. Still, number one will be parking, but number two will be aviation lease instead of cares. And you can kind of break down there. You can kind of see again, lines 10 and 8, because of the subsidies, why those numbers are so negative. And this is kind of breaking it down on the rates and charges. And at one point, just to give you an idea, at one point, and this was way back, a few years back, we wanted that rate to be below $4. Mike, John, remember that? We wanted it to be below $4. Yeah. Well, that's like getting something at the dollar store for $1. It don't happen anymore.
When we get to the comparative, something to remember is we carry all the expenses on our income statement. We have our own police department. We have our own fire. A number of the other competitor airports have those services provided in whole or in part by counties or other entities, so they're not part of their landed rate.
Yep.
So it stinks, but that's reality.
Yep, and there's other things that go into that as well. Because again, if you're getting the services from them, then you can require a certain amount. For example, one of the things that we had challenge with was the heart and lung. Right, heart and lung means you got to pay folks 100% when they're out on a work-related injury. If they were with the county, somebody else could pay that, and then we could have somebody else come in and work for us. So we got to carry that and bring in another person to do the work. So that's where the challenges come in when you're trying to carry all that cost. And again, we don't have a problem with doing what we think is right. It's just somebody's got to pay for it. So this is just breaking down again our cost. You can see there 14%. And if we didn't do it down at the bottom without the subsidies for this year, landing rates would be up 7, terminal rates, which is what they argue the most about, would be up 36% higher than the rates we have there. So that's part of the reason we have those subsidies, because there's a little bit of infighting that goes on, particularly on the terminal, or who pays for what. This is just breaking down. We talked about personnel and then non-personnel. This is just what the other non-personnel expenses and what they are. And these are 77% of the non-personnel expenses are these items here. And you can kind of see those are the big ticket items. Dues and subscription, our Microsoft, and all the stuff that we have to do on a regular basis. Some of our outside contractor stuff, small number. Fuel, electricity. A lot of these things, unfortunately, are not things that we can do anything about. You know, as much as I would like to argue over how much we pay for electricity, there's only so much I can do. And we need it to run the terminal.
We'll
So
be budgeting electricity to go up in 2026.
I gotta look and see,
That's going to be a much more material number with the data centers and the power usage.
you know,
I think it was about
15%, yeah. I know we bumped up the number.
Yeah.
But you can see it, now number 9 there is again, one of the things we talk about even in-house, and that is on the revenue on the parking that we pay to Hanover and Catasauqua, that number. So as that revenue goes up, we have to give them, well, we were giving them 10% of that number. So that's something to think about as well as we go through these numbers. But again, materials and supplies, maintenance and repairs, again, we're intense heavy, we're infrastructure heavy. So maintenance and repairs, we're trying our best to kind of figure out what big expenses are coming down the road. But to some extent, we have to take our best guess. There's certain things you just don't know. And then again, you can see what I pointed out in the financials, that debt service line for the garage is green. You can see number 11 that we talked about. That's what we have budgeted in there at this point for the airline settlement, somewhere around 500,000 to get back to them from the rates piece. Breaking it down. And again, this is just taking it out a little bit further, breaking down my quarter so it's not too busy. And this just takes it all the way out to the end of the year. Any questions? Again, it's kind of what we talked about last month. Same assumptions. We had a positive net income on the overall budget without CARES. We're going to continue to manage the expenses. We keep you up to date every month as things change. But overall, I think it's a good budget. I think a lot of hard work, but a lot of the directors, everyone behind the scenes. Again, we want to take care of everything, do the best we can with the resources we have. But I want to make sure we're good stewards of these monies. That we can do these things long term and we're not shooting ourselves in the foot for something that we want to do short term.
Entertain a motion to approve the 2026 operating budget. Motion by Mike, second by Kevin. Open it up for discussion and for questions. There's a lot of information there, so I want to make sure we've covered everything from a committee standpoint.
And this is your budget. I mean, it's management and the board's budget together. So it's important that you understand, this is probably one of the most important things you do is approve this budget, because this is our plan for next year. This is our plan.
Yeah. And we're spending down some of the cash that has been accumulated, which is why we wanted to add the bullet point regarding maintaining acceptable levels of cash, because that is critical. If you go, caught a couple of slides, over 30 million in cash, that's going down to 24 available cash with the other projects. So that you see the days cash on hand typing up. That was to be expected because the cash came in to do certain projects. So, but that's something we've got to keep a focus on.
One of the things that I think we need to keep an eye on too is the revenue side. The 1% that we're up without CARES is a good number. And I like the fact that we're ahead of the game without CARES, but we still have to keep an eye on that month to month, just to make sure we're maintaining that.
Yeah.
Because you can only cut expenses so much.
You
Exactly.
can't cut your way to prosperity.
Exactly. Any other questions?
Anything going on that we want to talk about in regard to any new routes or anything?
Not on the horizon.
Okay.
But that can change quickly.
And we have seen that change quickly.
Yep.
That is true. Okay, there was somebody on the phone had a question?
Yeah, John, I did. First, I'll just say to Todd and your team, very nice job in crafting this for 2026. One of the questions I had when I reviewed the packet that you shared last week, I don't remember what page or where it was, but it talked about looking for non-aeronautical revenue streams, additional sources of revenue. I don't know if it was non-AV. I just was curious, what are some of those things that would that would be considered, or are there anything that is in mind?
I'll let Tom answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question, Ricky. So it's something we're looking at all airports. And again, this is going back to COVID and just the cycles in aviation as we look at the industry as a whole can be very cyclical. A lot of discretionary travel built into the revenue. And so when travel dries up, so does the revenue. So looking at non-aero are things like the hotel that we have that we're constructing on the property. We've talked about some solar development. We have opportunities. Once we have a parking structure, it frees up the use of needing the frontage along Airport Road for overflow parking. So there could be some other development, other use, other non-aero type development in those areas. So I think it's really just looking at where there's some synergies, where there's some opportunities to put a development on the property that really aren't maybe aviation specifically related, but might be synergistic with the airport use. And those are the types of things we continue to explore from a development perspective. In addition to, in Todd's point, we're really focused on the aero and what can we do to continue to drive, the airline activity. But I think we have to diversify that portfolio and continue to look at non-aeronautical opportunities for revenue as well.
And a perfect example I love when I think of diversification, the Iron Pigs. They have a lot of traffic during the summertime, but now they're doing venues during Christmas time.
The elimination.
That's a way to bring in extra revenue. You got it there. So it's the same kind of philosophy, like, hey, it's there. How can we figure out ways to make more money? So that's just, kind of the way we think about things.
So
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
just so I heard right though, there's no other new revenue coming for 2026 that we're anticipating. You talked about the parking garage. I mean, that's going to be long. It's not 2026. We're not looking at any new streams.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, we're looking at the hotel coming online in early 2027.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ricky,
That's good information.
Go ahead, Ricky.
I was just going to say when you shared the slide there about the increased energy costs in electric and so forth, the first thing that did come to my mind is some sort of, while I'm very basic at solar energy, but I was glad to hear, Tom, you mentioned that as something that, could be something on the table coming in the next few years. So thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, solar's gonna work in a lot of places where it didn't work when power rates were 7 cents a kilowatt hour. It'll be 15 before too long.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any other questions, any other comments, committee members or board members that are here? This is a key topic. Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Aye.
carried. Todd, thank you. You can stay up, rates and charges.
Yeah, and I'll make this very short and sweet. This is just memorializing. We have to do a separate exhibit on the schedule. We're kind of in that last sheet, just breaking down all of our costs. and this is just all you're approving here. You can see down there, for airlines that don't sign the agreement, signatory agreement, they have to pay an extra 7%. That's the difference between the SIG and a non-SIG. Most of our airlines are signatories, so they pay the lower rate. And then mainly would come into play maybe for a diverted flight that's not normally here. They would pay a little extra, but they're not kind of a tenant. Breaking down all of the costs, one of the ones we always argue about, behind the scenes, nothing we can do about it, is that passenger facility charge. It's been there for like 100 years.
25.
Yeah, at some point, hopefully that number will go up, but we don't control that number at all. Any questions? Again, it's just memorializing what we talked about earlier on this sheet.
Entertain a motion to approve the 2026 airline rate and charges, rates and charges. Motion by Kevin, second by Bobby. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Okay, now I believe, Ryan, you're up.
Yep.
Talk about spending money.
Yep.
Todd didn't do enough spending.
Yeah, exactly. That's been some of it. Ryan spends the rest.
Wow, thanks, Paul.
You're welcome.
Morning, everybody. So, kind of building on what Todd was mentioning, some of the pieces in the budget, I'll go through some of this briefly. We went through last month, but really where we are in terms of, again, capital intensive, you can see kind of the split, but basically we average around just under 10 million a year of our share. Obviously grants are a big part of what we do, and really feeds into the projects that we do and prioritize as well. But again, just kind of looking at the history there. Yeah, I talked about this last month, but again, really being strategic in what projects we choose to move forward with, having contingency in each project, roughly 10% for unforeseen conditions. Obviously impacting safety, capacity, and other initiatives are important. And then again, you kind of saw in the budget, we have 3 primary exhibits. Exhibit A is obviously our grant and major non-grant projects. I'll kind of walk through briefly here in a minute. Exhibit B is our departmental projects, so they're prioritized. And this year, if you notice, we sorted them into general categories just to make it easier, terminal projects versus equipment, vehicles, those kind of things. And then also Exhibit C used to be broken out per year, but we consolidated into one exhibit just to make it easier to see the 5-year, the changes based on our cash as well as the priorities. But then it's just in there to help see what's coming next. And a lot of those projects you'll see are the same, they're just different phases. So kind of added that in there as well. Again, looking at Exhibit A, we went through the projects last month, but you'll see the split, again, the different phases for the runway, the taxiway Delta for the Northside Logistics Cargo Complex. You'll see kind of the breakout. The total program cost for reference on the far left, our project cost assumption for next year, and then our share as well. So you can kind of see the breakout. Assuming we're spending roughly 31 million on those projects, and our share of that is just under 5. So again, grants are a huge part of that process. 9 major non-grant projects. Again, we talked through. Got the parking garage. Again, a lot of pavement repairs we've mentioned in there before. The Hangar 7 door rehabilitation, line 11. There we had in this year's budget, but again, as we talked about due to timing, that's really moving into next year, so you can kind of see where that split goes. And then some of the other projects we've kind of talked through just to keep moving. Most of them are really designed for projects next year, but again, as we work through phasing, you can do design and stop depending on cash, schedules, and other things. So kind of looking at those as we move. And then I know Todd shows it separately in his cash flow, but the property acquisitions is one that we have there because again, as properties come up, we want to be
It's a placeholder.
placeholder just to make sure we're ready. Because there are a lot of properties that come up that are on our airport layout plan that we want to make sure we're prepared for. So just kind of pointing that out. And then looking here as well at the end, item 20 is really the roll up of that Exhibit B, the departmental. So that's 2.5 for next year. And then item 23 is really the cash flow adjustment. So even to Todd's point, money we've actually spent this year, but we're not getting the grant receipts until next year. So that's really where that split ends up. Roughly 2 million of grant funding that we're going to get next year that we actually spent this year. So again, it's all timing. Just kind of as a note in the capital, when we kind of go through, you'll see grants that we have in closeout, the reason we track them is we can't draw down the last 10% until the closeout's been approved. So that's a big chunk of that money. So we spent it. Sometimes it takes 3 to 6 months for the FAA to go through the actual closeout. So just kind of a piece there for information. Again, departmental went through a little bit less projects than last year, but you'll see kind of the split. You see the 2.5. Again, a lot of them are operational critical for what we do day to day, and then just sorting them that way with those categories. I believe that's all I have. Short and sweet. Any questions?
Entertain a motion to approve the 2026 Airport Capital Improvement Program. Motion by Mike.
I'll make the motion.
Second by Ricky. Open it up for questions. There's a lot there. One of the things you mentioned, Ryan, that I just want to continue to keep on the radar screen. There are a number of our grants that are reimbursement grants, not upfront grants. So our management team's done a great job managing that, and we've gotten the money. But that continues to be an operational risk. I think, Paul, you've mentioned that once or twice in terms of the timing of the money coming back. So understanding that and making sure we continue to do the great job that we've done in making sure that money comes in is key. So any other questions, any other comments from anyone? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Great. Ryan, thank you. Okay, does anyone have any new business to bring before the committee today? Okay, hearing none, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Thank you,
Somebody.
John.
Okay, we're good.
Thank you,
Okay,
John.
back to you, Mr.
And
Chair.
Todd and Ryan, great job by your team putting it together.
Absolutely.
We'll now move to Dawn and the business committee.
Thank you. All right, welcome to the November 24th, 2025 Business Committee meeting. Sylvette, can you please call the roll?
Dawn Gottschall.
Here.
Justin Grimshaw.
Here.
James Irwin. I do see him online. Frank Fasciano.
Here.
Kevin Surface.
Here.
Jonathan Strauss. Chris Worley. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there any public comment?
Not at this time.
We'll move into our action items. The approval of the meeting minutes for the October 23rd, 2025 meeting. Can I get a motion?
Sure.
Frank?
Second.
Kevin? Thank you. Any questions or discussions or changes to those minutes? Hearing none, the motion passes. All right, we will move on to the approval of the local share account, LSA, grant application resolution from Ryan.
Great. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
So speaking of grant funding, this is a resolution request to apply for grant funding from the PA LSA account, local share account. We did something similar a few months back for our truck that we submitted. They're waiting to hear on. But as part of the grant requirements, we need a resolution from the board authorizing
Unknown participant is now exiting.
us to submit the grant application, and then if we are successful, for Tom Stout and myself to execute the documents, should we be awarded the grant. The grants are capped at $1 million, so that's obviously what we're going for, given the construction cost of the garage. If you want to scroll down a little bit, but really just looking to get approval for the resolution, which was attached in Civic Plus. Again, boilerplate language they have. The grant applications are due in a few days, November 30th. We have everything else buttoned up. We just obviously need to include this. And then Q2 of next year, we might hear if we're successful.
Any question? All right, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the grant application resolution for the LSA grant. Frank and Justin.
Frank can have it.
Okay.
You really
Frank
want
first, Justin is the second.
Passionate about that.
All right, anything else? If not, motion passes. All right, moving on to discussion items for the capital projects update.
Great. You done? All right, so going through our typical monthly updates. We are in winter shutdown now, but I'll go through some of the items that went through this past month in terms of some of the areas that we've been working on this month. Again, winter shutdown, package 5, really just cleaning up the areas that we're seeding and grading in the area Z there. Again, really shut down, so a lot of it is just more paperwork working through everything to get ready for next year. Package 6, again, we talked about, that's really not starting until next year. So again, just really working through submittals, paperwork during the winter season. This one, again, winter shutdown, they did finish that area there in green this year. Permanent markings are likely going to be applied next year based on temperatures, but they do have the temporary markings down. After paving, you can't put the permanent markings down for 30 days, so that's really what that time frame is. So we'll be doing that next year, and then this phase will move to the east side of runway 1331 next year, so we're working through that. This one, we just got grants here a couple months ago, working through really the paperwork there as well, but this is the next phase for the taxiway alpha rehabilitation on the 2-4 end, which actually does, you kind of see here, I don't know if we talked about this before, maybe, so it actually includes this little end around that the FAA is paying for as temporary pavement, because where it's closed, 767s for cargo have to basically do a U-turn, and they need that in order to do it. So FAA funds it, and when the project's done, it actually goes away. So that's a big piece, again, operationally critical. We just need to make sure folks can continue to utilize the runway. So working through that. Cargo we talked about with Taxiway Delta, that's the big one next year, working through. So again, working through submittal, schedule, timing. A lot of this work is outside. Majority of it is outside the runway safety area, so it can be day work. It's not as restrictive as the runway and taxiway work. So we're hoping that can help move along construction, because that's not something we typically have the luxury of here when we're working on the airfield. Again, talking about the parking structure, the biggest thing in terms of the schedule of where we are, where we went through 60% design, we talked previously, 90% design submittal we're anticipating in January, 100% in April, bidding in May, and then working through obviously procurement, a lot to do between those dates, and then looking to start sometime after Labor Day next year when our traffic typically drops down. So a lot to happen before then, but just kind of an update. We are actually looking to submit to the Conservation District next week in order to make that schedule. So that's the other piece that we're working through. And I think you may remember Elizabeth mentioned last month, we did get our variances approved from the township for the height and the parking stall depths as well. So continuing to move that forward. Government building demolition, really that's just about done here this past week. The block wall repair has been completed. The permanent roof has been installed. They're really just working through the metal edging and gutters on the side as well. As the AOA fence that actually just worked on this past week. So you can kind of see the permanent roof in place, working through some of the touch-ups now, as well as the final fence alignment, getting that squared up for winter, and obviously making that building watertight. Currently ongoing now as well, as part of our comp paves, is Employee Lot 2 area that we're working through. It also includes some ramp lighting on the air side, so working through that as well. But actually working through hopefully paving this week if they can, obviously given the temperatures are dropping here pretty quick, but then continuing to get the electrical work in for a lot of our GSE and de-ice trucks in that area. So you can kind of see some photos here. I have to put in obviously some of the curbing, and that whole area in the bottom right is generally the footprint of where the old government building was. So quite the change from what it used to be for quite a few years now. Moving on to Braden with the runway edge lighting project. Again, really doing what we can. We did identify the gas line in the area, but construction is likely not going to start until next spring. Again, we could start it here this month, but we'd rather not start and then stop and be dependent on the weather. So just working through a lot of those now, because the project itself is only about 30 days long. So we just want to make sure when they come in, they can do it and finish. So working through that. Again, updated this a little, not much has really changed, but again, as I mentioned earlier, you can see those grayed out ones. And it's not big chunks of money, but again, as we talked about, that final 10%, we're just tracking for the receipts, and then we'll continue to update this into next year and as projects get completed and added. That's all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ryan?
I don't know if this is out of place right now, but on the design of the parking structure.
Yep.
I was not on the board when all the process of evaluating the need for it. But what my concerns are is this being designed that it's a flexible parking deck? What I mean by that is when I go to major airports, when I come to this airport, the difference is I can get dropped out off front here without a problem. I can get picked up with only walking, a short distance, and I'm not worried about my car or me getting run over. You go to a lot of airports, the worst place at that airport is your drop-off pickup. That is where it's the worst experience at an airport, is your drop-off pickup. So what I'm concerned about is, where is the direction of cars going? In 20 years, are we pushing a button and our car going to drive itself home? In 10 years, we push a button and a car go home. Is there going to be more Uber, more drop-offs, more, so is this parking yet being designed that we can transition 1 or 2 levels into a drop-off going? I don't want to go backwards with this, but those are my concerns. Is this thing going to be valid in 10 years from now? And can we make this thing flex part of it into where maybe the majority of people are not parking here anymore? Maybe they're dropping off, and how do we? I understand that's our revenue, but how do we cover that? So, just some things I was thinking about the last, thinking about this parking deck.
Yeah, I mean, part of the design we did talk about, the other month, even putting in structural components for, future solar panels and other things. We've heard a lot of structural integrity of garages you could turn into, office space, for example, or other things because of how it's designed. But to your point, we do have a big mix now of pickup drop-offs, Uber, Lyft, people parking. It's very cyclical. It's actually higher in the winter than it typically is in the summer, which our traffic is actually reversed. We have more traffic in the summer than we do in the winter. But I think the big thing is even with, and Tom kind of mentioned it earlier, even with the available parking capacity, it's just really bringing it closer to the terminal that gives us kind of that flexibility in the future with developing the area, still having capacity that even if things change based on technology trends or shifts in Uber, Lyft, pickup and drop-offs, still having capacity to use what we have, not as if it's completely unfilled. But those are things I know, Tom, we've talked a lot even with the team about looking at things to be future-proofing and making sure that we're not caught flat-footed if something changes that we're not aware of. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I mean, yeah, I think, no, it's a great question. And I think part of it is also adaptive reuse if things change, right, is basically what we're saying. And so rental car might also be a great reuse of that space for rental cars, staging areas in those areas. The top level of that structure, if there isn't solar on top of there, what could land on top of that structure potentially in the future? We're talking about electrification and advanced air mobility. So we have some options for the structure as we thought about design and what the micropile foundations needed to be to support all this maybe very different activity in the future, depending on, what's coming down the line. And it's, if you have that crystal ball, I'll happily get a price from you for that one. But yeah.
That's the problem. We can't see down the road, and we have to.
So
today's needs. It is interesting that I really didn't think about that, but it does free up a lot more property to build or to do whatever is appropriate at the time. So that's a real good point that I really didn't think about, freeing that extra space up to maybe create more potential income.
And again, along that airport road frontage, I think could have more value to maybe some non-airport specific uses. So, kind of looking, looking at all of those uses and really master planning that whole terminal area and where do things want to be over time. But I do think the parking piece is something we've got to solve pretty quickly to be able to continue to grow. So that's an important one for us. And I think bringing it here into the terminal area, and in that rendering, you can see that elevated walkway over the upper roadway. So back to your pedestrian vehicle conflicts and easy drop off. I think we're keeping all of that, which is key. and also bringing all of that parking, in a sense, much closer for customers to be able to get in and out of the facility. So I think it works well. But there's probably a number of adaptive uses that we could think through as, you know, things start to change in terms of how people use ground transportation.
Yeah, as flexible as we can make.
Yeah.
Better, I would think.
Yeah, for sure.
Good point, Kevin. You've got parking needs increasing now, but self-driving, I don't even think it's 20, it's probably closer to 5 to 10 when the car can go home. Parking is going to drop at that point. These things come into play. So definitely. And it was amazing. I flew down to Nashville a couple weeks ago. The pickup and drop-off operation they have down there is a pain in the ass, and it's enormous. And you're right, and you've got cars coming from all over the place.
I just was up in JFK.
It's gonna take some time for the way, with the price of cars and the amount of retrofit that would be required to make an old car work with self-driving.
Oh, that's not, that will
It's not gonna happen.
Oh, the old cars will never be
It's
self-driving.
not gonna happen, so I think you're
The
gonna
Tesla
have.
self-drivers are here already. A friend of mine lives in
They are, but
Grinesville,
but
uses it 90% of the time.
But there's the share of cars that are like that is pretty low at the moment. And
For now.
it's gonna go up, but it's gonna, 10
It's
years
not
is
gonna be all
probably,
cars.
yeah. I'm gonna have my car for 10 years. I hope I'm still driving at that time, but,
You'd be amazed at how many are
Yeah.
out there already in this. It's already happening.
Any additional questions or
question.
comments? Okay. Is there any new business? Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Any new business? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
That one to Frank too.
He didn't want it.
I'll be adjourned.
Thank you. I'll now call to order the executive committee. Sylvette, would you call the roll, please?
Glenn Beedman,
Present.
Mike Stershek,
here.
Frank Fasciano,
Here?
John Hayes,
Here.
Paul Anthony.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Any public comment?
Not at this time.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the meeting minutes of October 23rd.
So
Mike, second by Frank. All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Next item, approval of the Florio, Perucci, Steinhardt, Capelli, and Tipton invoices for October. John, Frank, any questions on the invoices? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any new business? Elizabeth, executive session? Not there.
No need.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
We'll see you at high noon on tomorrow.
Way to roll through it, Glenn.